Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew, Keith Johnson.
I'm smiling. I hope we die quickly.
And Veronica Dashel.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about the Star Trek Picard episode Vox today. But before we
Wow.
get into that, right? Keith, do we have some This Week in Trek this week?
Yeah, I had a couple of things I thought were kind of relevant to based on this show, which is both a look forward and a look back. We're talking about Picard, forward and back. I'm going to do birthdays real quick first. On the 15th of April, 1922, was born the man who was not the first Klingon ever shown, but most considered to be the most prototypical Klingon ever shown from the Day of the Dove.
Is that Michael Ansara?
That's it. The late, great Michael Ansara, who played Kang, who is my favorite Klingon from the original series. Okay. And many people say he is more like the Klingons that we see now, with the honor and the stoicism, whereas Kor was full of fun. And he's vicious, but he was kind of, I don't want to say more lighthearted.
Right.
He was a Klingon who laughed. Kang is more like the Worf Klingon. And he, of course, came back in Deep Space Nine in a really memorable role. Just a great actor.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Another birthday, 15th of April, 1940. This is an easy one because his outro is phenomenal. It still haunts me. No, please. I want to stay. Yep,
that would be Charlie Evans.
Played by?
Ooh, Junior. Robert Walker Jr.?
That's it.
There we
go. For those who don't know, look him up online. Robert Walker Jr. is the son of the famous actor Robert Walker, who played the psycho from the Alfred Hitchcock movie Strangers on a Train. Okay. And boy, oh boy, do father and son look alike. They have literally the same crazy eyes when they play crazy.
Right.
And in light of what's going on in Picard, I thought it was interesting to mention Robert Walker playing Charlie Evans, because Charlie Evans was given powers and had his, you might say, DNA rewritten by the Phasians. And he was too powerful to have around, and they couldn't take it out of him. So, yeah, I know that's a stretch. And here's another good one. Now, this is an anniversary on the 9th of April, 1990. First day of filming of a little episode that became to be called The Best of Both Worlds.
Okay, that's apt.
Yeah, which of course is the awesome two-parter that introduced Picard as Locutus, the Borg almost take Earth. It was an incredible, those of us who saw that thing live remember that Patrick Stewart was in contract negotiations at the time. And it was by no means sure that Patrick Stewart was coming back after that season, because it was a cliffhanger and a season ender. And so people were wondering if Picard was going to be killed off and if Riker would end up as captain. And of course, we've seen in alternate futures that Picard died. There's that one episode where Worf kept popping between universes, and one of them, well, many of them, the Borg had taken over, and one of them, Riker, was captain of the ship because Picard died with the Borg. Of course, the Best of Both Worlds also introduced Commander Shelby.
Right.
So very relevant. And the last one I want to do, back to the 15th of April, 1998. This is not an introductory show, but is an absolutely seminal show for a whole bunch of reasons. 1998 was the premiere of the Deep Space Nine episode In the Pale Moonlight.
No.
Considered by many to be the single best episode of Deep Space Nine, considered by everyone to be one of the best episodes of Trek ever. And for those who may not remember, it's the one where Sisko compromises morals, ethics, regulations, Starfleet rules, all kinds of stuff, because he is so desperate to win the war against what? The Changelings.
That's right.
So I thought all those were kind of relevant to what we were talking about tonight. And that is This Week in Trek History.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that. All right. So we're going to be talking tonight about Star Trek Picard Vox. And so if you're listening to the audio podcast, we're going to take a quick break right here and promote a fellow ESO Network podcast show. But don't go away, because when we get back, we'll be getting into Star Trek Picard. We've got a lot to talk about this time, so stay right there. And if you're watching with us live, we're going to continue on and talk about Star Trek Picard Vox. So spoiler alert for Star Trek Picard. The penultimate episode of season 3, Vox. What did you think, Keith?
I like it. I have some plot issues with it, like the whole young people, old people thing kind of sort of doesn't make sense to me. And maybe this is what they intended, but the whole time I was literally yelling, "Are you freaking kidding me? You're going to link the entire fleet. Are you freaking kidding me? You're going to use Borg technology. Are you freaking kidding me? You're going to allow people to take over a starship against this will. Did you not just have the whole thing with the synth in season 1 of this very that the throwback, they talked about this very season. So that is kind of insane to me. And I like jumping ahead a little bit. I like it when they even commented that how ironic it was that Admiral Shelby was speaking so fondly of this Borg-like thing they're doing to the entire fleet.
Right.
But I really liked it, and I know, Charles, I think you said, and a lot of people had guessed that maybe Jack was a Borg. So it was interesting to see that. I got questions. I enjoyed it though.
Okay. How about you, Veronica?
I liked it a lot.
Okay. Well said.
That's about it.
I did too. And I mean, like you, I've got some criticisms of the season plot wise and so forth. But I mean, the whole idea of this season, the whole gimmick is just bringing the next gen crew back together. And I think as far as that goes, and as far as the treatment of those characters, I think they're doing a great job. I mean, they're really paying some things off, and they're giving us what seems like a really emotionally satisfying ending for that crew, that we didn't get in Nemesis, frankly. And so, I mean, I enjoyed it. I thought it was great. We've got a comment from Wayne, our buddy Wayne. Hey, Wayne.
What's up, brother?
Yeah, he said that about 10 minutes into the episode. Yeah, it's a heck of an episode this week. So where do we want to start?
Maybe Jack.
Okay.
That was the first thing well, at least my notes. My first note was organic Borg tech. Right. So they engineered Picard, and nobody could find it out, but it was powerful enough that his DNA was permanently altered such that he passed it on to Jack.
Yeah, apparently.
That's wild.
Yeah, and I could buy that the Borg alter your DNA. And that I guess something just made it through. I'm thinking back to All Good Things when he was having Beverly scan him because in the future he had Irumodic syndrome, and she said, "Well, there's a defect in your parietal lobe that could lead to a number of afflictions in the future, one of which is Irumodic syndrome." So that parietal lobe defect has been there at least since All Good Things, and I could sort of buy that Starfleet didn't catch it. That the Borg made a change to him that they didn't realize. And I mean, it's paid off now, So
is the understanding, therefore, that the Borg, they only changed Picard, but of course the Borg had no idea that Picard would have a child, right? That they weren't doing that kind of long game. It was just Picard. So this is kind of like good fortune for them, right? And the change.
Yeah, right. Because if you're going to pick somebody on the crew that's going to have a child, Picard, I wouldn't think is your number one choice.
Yeah, it would have been Riker.
Right. Yeah, and we haven't seen the Borg alter someone else in that way. But I mean, I don't know if the Borg were just that certain that Picard would have a child one day, or if it was just happenstance that Jack developed the way he did and the Borg were able to use it. I don't know.
Yeah, the only kind of weird thing about the DNA alteration is if you alter someone's DNA, even on a body-wide level, that's not going to be inherited unless you actually get down into the business area and alter the DNA down there as well. So, man, they sure did a deep cleaning on him.
Right. But as far as his DNA having been altered to this whole organic Borg thing, I mean, they're right in the show. And in First Contact, he could still hear the collective.
Right.
And really, that should have been more alarming to everybody than it was. When he said, I can hear them. They should have been like, hang on, what?
Yeah.
Let's write a report about this real quick.
Yeah, I've seen many times over the years people say that Picard because of the Borg and Data because of Soong's programming are two people that probably should have been retired.
That's true for most Starfleet officers. They go back to work awful quick after these weird things. Let me get a couple comments in real quick. Michael Phillips is with us. He says, hey, Michael.
Michael. What's up, Michael?
Clarence Brown chimed in. Talk about playing the long game. Yeah, absolutely.
What's up, Clarence?
Wayne said, I thought the episode might have been written by Bill S.
Bill Shatner.
Maybe. If Bill Shatner had written this episode, Bill Shatner would be in this episode. I'll say that. Captain Kirk would be saving everybody right now if that was the case.
Actually, that's true. The Borg would have dug up his body or stolen his body and revived it. Absolutely, They would have.
And then we've got a Facebook user that liked your use of business area, looks like. It's a technical term. Yeah, I mean, I kind of had guessed that maybe he had passed something down to Jack that made him susceptible to the Borg. I didn't guess that it was the organic Borg thing. I thought maybe it was like some kind of nanite thing. I was still in the old nanite mindset, but I mean, I think it works in the episode. I'll buy it, you know?
Yeah, but I agree with you. Thinking back to First Contact when Picard was babbling about he could hear the Borg Queen, they really should have been. Yeah, that should have been really kind of alarming that he was still hearing her because Beverly said she took all the Borg technology out of him.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, in First Contact, he was having weird Borg visions himself. We attribute it to sort of dreams because you know the Borg were coming back, and he's got that on his mind. But I mean, who's to say that wasn't a remnant of his connection to the Borg?
Right. Now, they said that Vedic, or as in the Changelings, found out that Jack had this. I wonder how and when did they find out that Jack was Borgified, as it were?
I don't know. It seems like everybody knows that Picard has a son except Picard in the show. Now, I mean, it could be that the Borg Queen can sense him, that the Borg Queen is making contact from a distance with his mind, and she realized who he was and sent Vadic to find him.
That's a good point. Yeah. One thing I find interesting, you know, whenever everybody plays the game, where everybody plays the Star Trek games, and you see all those, you know, those questions of what if. One of the greatest what if questions in Star Trek history has been, what if the Borg tried to assimilate the Changelings?
Right.
That wouldn't have worked.
Well, yeah, but I guess they decided to have a partnership. As a matter of fact, Veronica, that's a good point because I wonder if it'd be interesting if you found out the Borg tried to assimilate the Changelings and realized they couldn't beat them, so they decided to join them.
Yep.
Right. Well, we identified our mysterious Facebook user. It's Vandy Beth Glenn. Thank you for joining us, Vandy Beth Glenn. Well, yeah, we don't know why her name's not showing up. StreamYards is funny that way. Then she also said the Changelings were working with the Borg, I would think. And yeah, I think so too. I think Big Giant Head was the Borg in some way. Maybe some manifestation of the Borg Queen. And then Clarence Brown commented, I think it was the Borg. Changelings were just a means to an end. And I agree with that. And Michael Phillips said, all I could think during this episode was let the fan service flow. And right. I mean, and that's kind of, you know, sometimes we're critical of the amount of fan service that gets put in these things. But I mean, I think for the finale for the next,
I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, and for a finale for the next gen crew, I mean, let's get some fan service in there. You know, I mean, we're fans. I mean, I was watching these guys on TV when I was literally 6 years old. You know, I mean, I remember I was 13 when All Good Things and Generations came out. Generations was the first film the first Star Trek film, at least I remember seeing at the cinema, and it was a huge event, you know. So seeing the Enterprise D crash in that episode and then seeing it resurrected here, man, it's like I'm 12 again. I'm 13 again. You know what I mean? Like, it's just fun.
I know what you mean. I'm 25 again. Or whatever.
Veronica's 8 again. Or 9 again.
How old that was.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you, Chuck, because it is a lot of fan service. Again, it's like we talked about in the movies where they always had this weird reason for Worf just happened to show up in the path of wherever the Enterprise was. And he just went along with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we're at the second to last episode of the season. I mean, how are we feeling about it? I mean, I think we've been more positive this season than for a lot of the live action Star Trek seasons, frankly.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've enjoyed this.
Star Trek Picard in particular, but go ahead.
Yeah. What do you think, Veronica? Because I've enjoyed it.
Yeah. It's the storyline's been a lot more interesting. There hasn't been any random break in the storyline. I mean, obviously there's plot holes because Star Trek, but it's been enjoyable, and there's been like deep dramatic scenes and funny moments, and they've been good about not trying to shove them together.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Even the things that I have some questions and qualms about, it's not like that frickin' bottle that Guinan had, whatever that stupid peace bottle was,
Right.
or the insanity that the how do you pronounce it, people? Elorians actually had a war with the Q. I mean, that had to be that's like that famous cartoon Bambi versus Godzilla. I don't care what Whoopi does with her, what Whoopi Guinan did with her hands. You ain't gonna have a war with the Q, unless you're Q. But yeah, so I agree with you, Veronica. There's nothing that just makes me really want to slap my head and go, "Oh my gosh, this is horrible."
Yeah. And I think the big thing for me this season has been the treatment of the characters, because that's the big draw of the season. That's the gimmick of the season, is that all the next gen characters are back. And I think they've been writing them really well. I've been really impressed with them. I've got criticisms. Like, I think that Troy could have gotten into this season earlier and had a little more substantive, contribution. But I mean, generally, I've just been really enjoying what they've been doing with the characters, and I've just enjoyed going on this journey with them, which I think is, for me, the number one thing. I mean, any Star Trek story you could pick apart, and I can certainly pick the storyline here apart, but it's just fun. I'm just enjoying myself. So I let things go that I usually be more critical of,
Yeah, and I find it very interesting that outside of the big two, the big three, the big two, in this case, Riker and Picard, I find it interesting that the person who has been most present in the show has been Beverly Crusher, because you can tell Terry Matalas is a fan, because Beverly Crusher, along with Troy, was the one that was talked about the most as being completely wasted in the series in a lot of ways. And it's funny that he made her so central from like episode 1. And that's kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. A couple of comments real quick. Vandy Beth said, "It's a Niagara Falls of fan service."
It is.
And then Michael Phillips commented, "I don't really see why the changelings would ally themselves with the Borg. Won't the Borg just assimilate them too?"
I don't see why they would ally themselves with either way. I don't see why.
I don't know that the Great Link would have, but I mean, these changelings that we're dealing with this season are have been tortured, like outcast radicals. They're sort of bent on revenge. So maybe they just saw their opportunity and grabbed it, or maybe they think that. I mean, the founders too could be pretty cocky, so maybe they feel like the Borg can't touch them. I don't know.
Yeah, that was the one thing we've been talking about, which is, are these changelings, are they 100% just a splinter group, and the Great Link is not behind this at all? And I find that interesting because, in Deep Space Nine, if you remember, when the Great Link wanted, spoilers for those who haven't seen Deep Space Nine, but when the Great Link wanted to do something to someone, they could do it across the distance, as in they literally changed Odo's biochemistry, his body makeup, across the distance. No, they actually did. They did it in person, right?
They sucked him into the link and did that.
Yeah, that's right. I think the most they can do is maybe put a little, like a come back home kind of thing in your mind or something. So so they couldn't, I guess they couldn't stop this splinter group even if they disagreed with them. And then no changing kills other changelings. So I kind of want the Great Lake is sitting there going, well, we really wouldn't have done this, but what do? Because they won't kill each other.
Yeah. And I don't think we're going to get any more answers about the changelings this season.
No, I think
we're past the changelings, I think, and onto the Borg now.
Yeah.
That frustrates me, because I really would like to know what happened, how these changelings became to be captured, and if the Great Link is at all involved in this. So that's disappointing, but I agree with you. We got one episode left or two? One episode left. So you're right. Yeah. Unless they're not going to be able to tell that story now.
Yeah, I almost would have preferred, instead of Vadic being killed off, if maybe Vadic had sort of pulled a Damar at the end and realized that teaming up with the Borg was a bad idea and switched sides, like some sort of further resolution of that character, rather than just sort of getting us through episode 8 and then being like, wahaha, dead.
Yeah, Vadic honestly never needed to be a changeling, because Vadic was a wasted character, I really feel. Especially supposedly being a changeling.
Yeah. Well, we did get the answer in this episode of why that changeling on the Stargazer, on the Titan, had taken the form of the transporter chief.
Yeah.
That was sort of a mystery earlier in the season, is why assume the likeness of such a low-ranking officer.
Yeah.
But the Borg are putting their assimilation tech into the transporter, and biologically, I was a little bit disturbed by the fact that they sort of threw it off as an offhand comment, but that Data said that the transporter saves the common biology that, like, the DNA you share with other humans, and I guess just fills it in. It just fills in the bits that's you.
That is insane. That is now. What's funny about that is in information technology, that is a common concept. Like, when you do, well, as you probably know, when you do software compression, right?
Okay.
When you compress a file, one of the ways it compresses a file is it takes out unnecessary stuff. And if something's repeated, sometimes you can just kind of put a marker and say, in this position, this position, this position, this exact same symbol, so you don't have to store them. And then there's a thing in information technology, when you back up data, and that's what they're getting this from. It's called deduplication. When you back up data to save space, when you back up your data, you analyze it and you say, well, this data bit and this data bit and this data bit are the exact same data bit. So you only store one of them, and then you kind of make a note that the rest of them are the same. Then you save space. So to your point, Charles, I agree. What they did is absolutely normal technology, but I wouldn't be doing that with human DNA. That's kind of scary, because
I mean, considering what they were doing with the ships and linking them all up.
Yes.
So,
I get that. Sure, like, all humans have certain element of our DNA that's the same, but, like, I don't know, just like let me do mine again.
Yeah, and honestly, that also introduces a usage of the transporter that they've never really had before. Because we've always talked about they've always introduced these weird episodes throughout Star Trek where the transporter has this incredible ability and they never use it again, like making Dr. Pulaski younger again.
Right.
And actually doing the same with Kirk and crew on the Lorelei signal in the anime series. But using the transporter like that is a little scary. And honestly, I could see some people philosophically going, I don't want to have the same DNA as, Bubba over there. So it's all the same. It doesn't matter. Well, how do you know? And how deep does that go? That's
right.
That's like the fly technology or something.
Right. Like, what if it selected the Vulcan one instead of the human one? Like, just scan me and you just reproduce what I have.
Exactly. That's a little scary.
Yeah.
And if it saved that for the human one, then why did the other crew also get Borgified?
Well, I think they just inserted that common the assimilation part into everybody's.
So every humanoid.
Right. I think so. Yeah.
That's the good point. What that means, it works on every race, like Vulcans and Andorians and.
Yeah, because we saw multiple races in this episode that had been organically assimilated.
Yeah.
Veronica, you mentioned the synchronizing the fleet just a minute ago.
Yeah, that was stupid. Like, there's absolutely no purpose to that at all whatsoever.
Like, no. I could see it like a Dominion War situation when you've got big fleet battles, that it might be efficient. It's kind of like self-driving cars, I guess, that, if you could 100% synchronize the fleet, that might be advantageous in some situations.
Yeah, but didn't they already point out in Lower Decks that having because that would be the same thing as like having an unmanned ship.
Yeah.
And didn't they point out in Lower Decks already that that's a really bad idea?
Yeah, it's always interesting to me when you get these common themes, the same season or same TV season across these different shows. But like, we had that protostar virus in Prodigy, and those robo ships in Lower Decks, and now the synchronized fleet in Picard. Like, it ain't working, guys.
No. And what's funny is when you guys just talked, and Veronica, you were just talking about themes. The theme of man using man or humans giving up control to computers has been a theme that goes back to the original series. And it's always been a problem. It's Kirk and M5,
Yeah.
And it's an episode the episode I like called Booby Trap, where the Enterprise is trapped in the TNG, when the Enterprise is trapped in that radiation field that's killing them. And the question was, did they let the computer pilot them out you have one chance only, live or die, or did you let the human do it? And Picard did it, because they said the computers can never make up for human creativity and intuition and gut feel. So it's as if they kind of reversed all the stuff they've been talking about for all these years, because I agree, automating an entire fleet It's kind of crazy. Again, after what just also happened with the synth. They just got through being concerned about the synth. It's kind of weird that they did this.
Well, it's funny too. Like, they introduce this automated fleet technology, and immediately the Borg show up and hack it. Well, last season they introduced that the Stargazer was built using Borg technology, and immediately the Borg showed up and hacked it. Like,
Yeah.
you guys are not predicting what technology is going to work out very well.
No, clearly they didn't watch Star Trek, the old Star Trek series.
Well, and that's a good point. Given what just happened with the Stargazer, these plans should have been scrapped.
Right.
They absolutely should have been scrapped. And I still, we were just talking about this. I still kind of wonder, because when I looked at that screen, there's a hell of a lot of starships around Earth. So is the rest of the Federation unprotected right now?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Somewhere out there, the Cardassians are like, this is our moment, man. Where's Starfleet?
Yeah.
Comment real quick from Michael Phillips. A huge part of our individual uniqueness is gene expression, which is how the DNA is interpreted by RNA.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I mean, I just reproduce my whatever DNA I've got. Don't cut any corners and copy and paste. Like we can we've got the processing power. Just I can see why Bones didn't want to get in that thing.
Yeah, I agree, because what Michael is saying, also what we're saying is, I mean, this is future tech, but this is some really serious tech that I don't think you should be playing around with under the best of circumstances.
Right.
I think Ro also knew that they were doing something with the transporter, because she was refusing to use the transporter as well.
Oh.
Yeah. I think Ro knew something weird was going on with the transporters, because she didn't want to beam over.
Good
but
point.
I mean, keep in mind too that like there's a lot of changelings infiltrated Starfleet, so we don't know who all is making these big decisions for the fleet. It could be that the changeling infiltrators are. You know what though? Like in season 1, you had Romulan infiltrators, and now you've got changeling. Like I wonder if like the Romulan infiltrators and changeling infiltrators were like across the hall from each other, like scheming against one another. Like, is there anybody in Starfleet that's just a Starfleet officer?
No.
Starfleet HQ is just infiltrators at this point.
Actually, yeah, that's a good point. If you think about the TNG episode Conspiracy, you kind of wonder about Starfleet headquarters, don't you?
Right. Like if they try to send you to HR, like to HQ, man, don't go. You're gonna get replaced. Clarence commented that Jack had a vision in the transporter room.
That's true. That's the first place that we saw him have a vision.
Right. Well, getting back to Jack a little bit, I mean, last week sort of ended with Troy, sitting down with Jack and telling him, let's look behind the door. Don't worry, you're not alone. And then this week, she looked in the door and just got up and ran out of the room.
Yep.
When your counselor runs away from you like that, you're gonna freak out. It's kind of like if you go to the doctor and they're like, "Uh-oh."
Yeah, if your therapist gets up and runs out of the room, something's wrong, man.
I thought that was great.
Right. I did like that she was like, well, there's procedures in place for this. Sorry about that, but we're invoking the Borg procedures. Like that makes sense, that you've got a crewman that may be, compromised by the Borg. I don't care who Sonny is. We've got procedures in place for this.
Yeah, it's kind of
Jack's reaction to that was stupid.
To just assimilate them and leave?
Yes. Like that.
That's consistent though with what from the beginning. Jack's been willing to like give himself up. Like, oh, they're after me. The crew's in danger because of me. All right, I'll go. Like that's been him from the beginning.
Yeah, he's being irrational, because I kind of agree. You're like, I'm being at least partially possibly controlled by the Borg, so I'm going to go to the source and take her on one-on-one.
Right.
And we saw how well that worked out.
Right. It's kind of funny that Vadic spent like the whole season trying to capture Jack and bring him to the Borg, and then this season he just flies there himself.
Yeah. So they mentioned that they were mining Picard's DNA, but then they don't know what they're using it for, because they're not using it to make people that Jack can control. So what do they want Picard's DNA, I wonder?
Well, I don't know how far this plot goes back, because at the beginning of the season they had captured the portal technology to cover up the fact that they had captured Picard's body.
Right.
And then they were going to weaponize Picard's body. So I think that the changelings were at that point using the Picard DNA stuff to do the transporter thing.
Yeah.
And that's why the changeling was a transporter guy. That was what I took from it.
Oh, okay, you're right. Oh, so they needed his body to put it into the transporters, and now they've done that. Okay,
I
that
believe
makes
so.
sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. This is deep.
I had the thought this week, and I told Veronica that they had there's a Picard cadaver laying around. It would have been kind of cool if the Borg had like reanimated it, and then Picard had to like face Locutus. That. I was super fan wanky, but I was like, that would have been kind of cool, actually.
Yeah.
So, what do we think of the Borg in this episode? We got Alice Krige back as the voice of the Borg Queen.
Is that who it was?
Yeah.
I wasn't sure. I couldn't tell. I wrote in my notes, was it going to be Alice Krige or Susanna Thompson? And
yeah, it was Alice Krige.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah. I don't think that we'll see her in makeup. We just saw her from the back. Maybe we will, but I don't think she cared for being in the makeup the first time around. Right. Now she's 70 years old, so I don't know that she would agree to do it again. But I thought it was really effective. She's super good as the Borg Queen.
Mm-hmm.
She's like for me, the definitive Borg Queen is, as much as I like the others. I think Alice Krige, because she's the original,
Right. Right. I agree with that.
Comment real quick from Michael Phillips. I still want to know what happened to all the original humans who have been replaced. What if the changelings have to keep the originals somewhere to maintain the forms, like the original Zygons? I don't know. I hope Tuvok's alive.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Would they need them after they?
Know.
What's a Zygon? Is that a Doctor Who reference?
Yeah, the Zygons are shapeshifters in Doctor Who that they have to keep your original form alive to maintain the copy. So you'll have like a room full of like people hooked up to things that are those Zygons are walking around looking like them.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. I hope they didn't kill him, because that means Tuvok would be gone, and I don't think they're going to kill off Tuvok like that.
Well, I know, and I hope Shelby makes it. We saw Shelby get shot as her view screen was going out.
And
I think she's gone.
Quit bringing back the old characters to murder them immediately. Just knock it off.
Well, yeah, because the thing is, she had two glowing holes in her when they so I don't know if she's going to make it out of that one.
Also, all the crews were like, kill anyone that's not assimilated.
Yeah.
All right. They weren't setting anything to stun.
I'm going to pretend that Shelby wears a phaser-proof vest all the time, even during Frontier Day. And I'm going to pretend that Admiral Shelby is still alive. We got Admiral Shelby.
That was pretty nice. We always wonder what happened to her.
Yeah, I know. And it's that they're doing a good job this season. Really, on Picard generally, but this season of bringing back some of those really memorable next gen guest stars. Not Barclay. We haven't seen Mr. Broccoli yet, but they're pretty well covering them though.
Yeah. Yeah.
A comment real quick from Michael Phillips. It says he was disappointed that Shaw died, but glad he got good closure for his arc.
Yeah, I can't believe they killed him off.
Yeah,
I can. It kind of. They had him on his dying breath using Seven of Nine's name, which I've been hoping for since the first episode. So now I can like Shaw, and really, it's setting up for Seven of Nine to be the captain of the Titan. So I could see that, and also you don't need Shaw for the finale. You've got the next gen crew on the Enterprise D. Like, there's already this show is already character heavy.
But in light of everything that's gone on, and I don't have a problem with her. But in light of everything that's going on, there'd be no suspicion for having a former Borg as captain of one of your starships. I mean, what could go wrong?
Right.
Obviously nothing, because she didn't reassimilate.
Yeah.
Well,
nanites in there and whatnot.
That scientifically and medically was the one plot hole in the show that bothered me more than anything else. Was they tossed off some incredible techno or biological babble about the frontal cortex stops growing and changing at age 25. Therefore, those modifications only work on people 25 or younger. That literally makes no sense. That literally makes no sense, because the whole point is, if you're reshaping their DNA, at least as far as I know medically, it shouldn't matter how old you are. That I couldn't buy that. I don't get that.
Right.
And also, if as we're saying, if you're so deep and so incredibly sophisticated that you can store common human DNA in a buffer and everybody's getting the same DNA and you can do all this stuff, I guarantee you that they would have the technology to modify the brains of somebody over 25. So that makes no sense to me at all. It's a real bad plot hole that made me groan. The only thing I can say was, boy, are they really pushing the thing of trying to show that old people are valuable. Because I think that's what it all comes down to. Because that comment about, I've never been so happy to see a room full of wrinkles.
Yeah, I mean, it's setting up the fact that, I mean, the cast of this show is, average age 70. So, I mean, it's setting up the fact that the old timers have to save the day.
Right.
I think that's really all it comes down to. But
Mhm.
I mean, it being Star Trek, I mean, you can read into meaning in it. I've seen people already online, talking about what is that saying about society? Are they saying that the older people, like the younger people, are too connected and too on TikTok and things, and the analog generation needs to, you know what I mean? Like, there's already been people having those
Yeah.
discussions.
That's kind of a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it's a very interesting. I had a long conversation with a friend the other night. We were talking about that, and we've all had this discussion, which is technology and things you do, movies and books you read and stuff like that. They change sometimes how you think and you act. But the question is, when do they truly change how your brain works?
Right.
As in, there's definitely some brain chemistry difference between, say, my brain, I'm in my late 50s, who grew up reading books and writing with a pen and paper, and somebody born now who literally would grow up with a tablet and a phone. There's absolute proof to how their brain processes information will be different than my brain. And so I never even thought about that bigger point. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So I haven't put a lot of thought into that today, but something to think about. I mean, I think it's really just a contrivance. It's kind of like in the Lorelei signal when the women had to. It's an excuse for Uhuru to be in command, that the men are all,
right,
out of commission. And it's kind of the same thing here, with the young people are out of commission and the old people have to save them because our cast is old.
Yeah. That is literally the one plot point that I kind of groaned at. It's the one I'm having the most trouble with, but I can overlook it. So if you think about that, and they don't have time in 1 hour, I would love to see the running battles. Like we were saying at Starfleet Academy, there'd be all these old instructors and admirals and all the cadets fighting against each other. And I would assume when the bulk of the starships will be the older. But here's the problem: the command staff is usually older ones, so all the command staffs getting slaughtered on every starship. So when we're done, the entire Starfleet would be like 25.
Yep.
Right.
Wow.
Apparently that's what it is right now, unless there's people like on Earth that hadn't used a transporter on a starship recently.
Right.
Wow. Yeah.
Well,
so technically the cadets that are still in the academy that have not used a transporter on the ships, I mean, they're under 25, but they wouldn't have gotten the gene alteration.
Yeah, primarily affecting the fleet. So I mean, we don't know if the population of Earth's been affected or not. If not, you might have 9-year-olds who are assimilated and murdering people.
Yeah, they apparently walk around and walk into transporters, and it knows exactly where they want to go.
Right. They do. Yeah, they have the sidewalk transporters you just walk through. If they get those things, man.
Yeah. And I gotta assume, even though they
flaw in the system, like you can reprogram your DNA with that.
There's huge flaws. There's huge flaws in the system, but this is really interesting how you learn something that can make you twist your mind and think differently. And that is when Charles said that there was this whole possible, whether it was intended or not, a philosophical discussion about young people being too connected and about technology having too much control over us. I think I mentioned a week or two ago in one of our shows, there was a scientist in Japan or China who is actually in jail right now because he genetically engineered some embryos, and those children were born. And as far as we know, that's the first significantly genetically modified humans ever born, and it has been a huge issue in the medical community about what he did. Yeah. And so there's a lot to be talked about here, like you said, Veronica, with what the transporters can and can't do. And I also wonder, they said most of the fleet was there, but I got to assume all the fleet wasn't there, and they can't possibly have modified all the ships. And there's got to be older ships.
If they're all linked, then yeah.
Yeah, surely they've got like X number of ships to maintain important functions, because you wouldn't recall the entire fleet, whether they said that or not. That just seems silly.
Yeah, I mean, there's got to be Vulcan ships, and there's got to be, and then there still can be some ambassador class ships that are older, where they said that maybe the technology they didn't get the link to them, and it sounds like I guess they have to be on the ship physically to make the transponder modification. So yeah, if they couldn't get to it, they didn't do it. So
right.
If this were longer, like a 26 episode season, you could write a really interesting story about like a war. Civil war within the Federation with all the ships and the people who aren't assimilated fighting against the ones who are assimilated. But we don't have time for that. And that would be cool.
Or even civilians having to save the day because Starfleet's compromised. Like you could do a lot with that.
Right. Right.
Well, we want to get on to the big reveal at the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me see if this works. Oh. Nope. I don't know how to do it. All right. But yeah, I mean, we got the Enterprise D.
Yeah.
I
was kind of expecting it, even though it was like, that's impossible.
I know, Brock. I laughed out loud because this is like a dude saying, "Yeah, I've been working on restoring this." Oh, there she is.
There we go. I figured it out.
Yes. This is kind of like a dude saying, "Hey, I've been working on restoring this old Mustang in my garage on the week." Jordy's like, I've been tinkering on the Enterprise for 20 years, and I know he didn't mean it, but I instantly is like, damn, you've been doing this by yourself for 20 years.
Yeah, I expect that he's got like there's a staff at this museum somewhere that he's had working on it. But I mean, it makes sense that you don't want to leave the Enterprise D saucer laying on that planet.
Right.
I mean, the Viridian, 4, I think, had like a pre-industrial humanoid society on it. So at some point they're going to go into space. You don't want them finding the Enterprise D laying there. And I mean, it's fixing it up and attaching a new star drive section. I noticed that he restored it to like the pre-Generations look. He didn't stick with the changes they made for Star Trek Generations with the extra platforms and consoles and things.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
and he did mention, didn't he say? I think was it in the sails came from another ship, the Syracuse.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, we got the Enterprise D back, which we've been talking about for like 6 episodes now. The Enterprise D back at the end. But what did you think of the reveal?
It was really good.
It was nice. I must admit, I smiled at that. And again, now to answer everybody who's joined us tonight, Michael and Vandy Beth and Wayne. Yes, you're right. The fan service is pouring out in this episode. Oh my gosh. It really is.
I had speculated before that maybe you'd have like a sort of a Day of the Doctor style ending where that's a Doctor Who reference, Keith, where all the museum ships, they had to get in the museum ships and save the day and all the old. But no, it looks like it's just going to be the Enterprise D. But I mean, it's so nice to see them back. For one, it's lit. And so everything looks better. They have better lighting in the 90s. But I mean, it's just cool to see the old back of the Enterprise.
Yes. And speaking of starships, did y'all catch some of the names of the starships they showed on the graphic?
Yeah.
There was the USS Hikaru Sulu, the USS Cochrane. There's always an Intrepid. There was an Intrepid. There's always going to be an Intrepid and a Defiant. We know this. One name I thought was awesome was the USS Fire Sword.
Okay.
I wonder what that's all about.
I don't know.
Weird.
The Trumbull, the Gilgamesh.
Okay.
And Gilgamesh, of course, is that mythic hero that Picard talked about in Darmok.
Right.
He was like he's considered in some ways like the first superhero. That his myth goes back literally thousands of years. The USS Mandel, not Mandela, but Mandel. The USS Okuda, the Oberon, the Drexler.
Yep.
Of course, the Venture. And then the Luna for the moon. So I like some of those names. So I'm really intrigued by the Fire Sword. Something about that. I just love that name.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, I like that they've gone back to using like 90s Trek style ships. Like they did some interesting things, I thought, with Discovery, with the Discovery fleet in the first couple seasons, where they had, I think, a sort of a Sid Mead look to them. But for this show being what it is, I'm glad that we're getting ships that look like the old ships again.
Right.
Clarence Brown commented that there was also a USS Pulaski.
Oh, I didn't see that one, Clarence. Really? Wow.
Yep.
Why?
That's that.
Why
Yeah,
is there not a USS Picard then, or a USS Kirk, or a
that's
USS
kind of
Spock?
major for yeah. It's kind of
Yeah.
major for a ship to be named after a doctor. I wonder if it's actually a medical ship.
It could be. Clarence
Yeah.
also said a lot of fan service felt like it was for the cast as much as for us, and I agree.
Def-
I think I'm sure it was an amazing day for them to all walk back on the Enterprise D bridge together.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm
Right.
surely the Ready Room will have some behind the scenes on that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Michael Phillips commented that we finally got Major Barrett's voice again for the computer.
Yeah. It sounded like that was from the episode where Picard went on that secret mission.
Could be. Yeah. Because the computer addressed him as Captain Kirk.
Yeah.
Or Captain Picard. So I think that was because they had talked before about like the Roddenberrys had used like digitized her voice to do a voice synthesizer. I don't think they were using that. I think it was just clips from Next Gen, but it worked really well. And it was so nice to hear all the old beeps and boops and hear Major Barrett's voice come over the speaker.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought so too. That was a good nostalgia moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, we got the old crew back on the old ship going to save the day again. It's like turning into like the last episode is like just a Next Gen episode.
Yeah. I thought it was a very interesting scene is when Geordi was yelling, "My girls!" They have my girls, and Data is the one who's trying to calm him down and saying, you know, what can you do, Geordi? You know, we can't do anything. Yeah. And then later on, I thought that was pretty cool. I kind of like the way Data is Data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's still Data, but he has a little bit of extra emotion in there.
Yeah, and he was on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast this week, and he was talking about how like Gene's original idea for Data was that he would become a little more human every year until he was just more and more almost human, but never quite there. So he felt like this is sort of fulfilling what Gene's original vision with the character was, that he's almost human, but not quite. Yeah. And I think that really came through with Data. I mean, he's got some lore in him. He's got some Dr. Sung in him and so forth. So, you know, I can buy that he's a little funnier and a little more emotional than he was previously, but still, I like that bit in the shuttle where Geordi was like, let's be a little more positive, Data. And he's like, I hope we all die quickly or something.
Yeah, I laughed out loud on that. I thought that was a funny moment as well.
Yeah, but I like that scene that you're talking about where, I mean, basically he was like, what are you going to do? Like, we need a plan.
Right.
You know, but talking to Geordi in a more human way than he would have previously.
Exactly.
And
so
then
I thought that was pretty good.
Clarence said that Geordi's scene was intense. His girls.
Yes.
And Spiner had said the same thing on the Ready Room.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I think they've done a good job, I think, at the very least, of giving the actors a version of their characters that they all feel satisfied with. You know? Yeah.
You know, it's funny, Charles, we're all talking about fan service and the stuff you do that kind of makes no sense, but it's just for effect. There's no real reason where everybody who's been Borgified has to start developing all that weird skin stuff. But it sure does look cool. It literally makes no sense. I'm like, why they change?
Yeah, like there's no reason for their eyes to turn black, but it's kind of cool when they do.
Yeah.
And
I did like it. It was a little cool when Shaw starts belting out orders and the helmsman has been taken over, and you just look at the back of his head and he's not moving, and Shaw's like, yeah, he's yelling orders, and you're like, it's too late.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of Invasion of the Body Snatchers ish, you know, when everyone's not acting like themselves.
And the thing I'm going to say real quick about Shaw dying is there has been so much talk online, and I mean so much talk online, where people were like, I want to see a continuing series, either a season 4 or a spinoff series with Shaw. And he's dead.
Right. I saw someone online say that it was kind of like a Agent Coulson situation where they killed Agent Coulson and everyone loved him and they just brought him back anyway.
Yeah.
So well, who knows?
Maybe they'll show. Yeah, go ahead.
If Data can come back twice, then surely Shaw can come back once.
Yeah, I could see Seven desperately like giving him a transfusion of the nanites she still has in her body, and that saves him just long enough to bring him back. Or hell, put him through the transporter. Seems like that thing could do anything.
I think it would just be like you said, it'd be funny to use the nanites because that would just irk him no end.
Oh yeah, that would. I did not like Shaw when he was first introduced. He got on my ever loving nerves, and
Mhm.
I was actually really upset when they killed him off. And that's
Yeah.
something about a character. What you
He's
know?
it's a really well written and well performed character over the course of the
Ab-
season. And I mean,
Absolutely.
we've only had him for what 9 episodes of TV,
Yeah.
which it's pretty great to go through that arc with a character in that amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like not long ago, like his ship was doomed, and he didn't even go to the bridge because like he had that foot problem. You know what I mean? like, Captain, are you going to the bridge? I'm off today. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that he's going to be a classic and remembered Star Trek character whether he comes back or not. But I
Right.
think there's going to be a lot of fans clamoring to get Shaw back whether he's dead or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A comment real quick from Michael Phillips. It said, "What happened to the Lal aspect? I had predicted that she would tip the balance in the Data Lore battle, but she's never been mentioned since."
I think wasn't it just her and what's his face's memories?
Before?
Yeah, her before.
Yeah, her before it was just their memories, not their personalities.
Right,
Maybe.
Michael, they said that, like Veronica said, Michael, with Lal and B4, they said they didn't integrate their personalities. They literally just had like their memories like a file. It literally be like reading a book about somebody, not their true
Right.
personalities. So that's why you don't get the Lal persona.
But also, Data downloaded Lal into his own positronic brain, like back in her original episode in The Offspring. So, she's been sort of part of Data's psyche for a long time. So maybe she's just part of who Data is, you know?
Right. That's always creepy because also remember Data has the memories of every single colonist on that colony where he was created too. So
right.
Once again, probably wouldn't have been my first choice as somebody to put on the flagship of the Federation, but hey.
I think too they probably wanted to, like they had him play Dr. Sung for a second and Lore for a second and B4 for a second. They probably wanted to avoid having Spiner play Lal.
Yeah.
Like a mask situation.
Yeah. It's that guy. Yeah, I can't. Charles, we were talking earlier about, you're saying like the Borg and all these people waiting around and looking for opportunities. The Romulans are not in the state to be a power right now, are they? Are they still kind of a devastated species?
Yeah, there's like Romulan warlords and stuff. We don't really know much about like what Romulan powers might be out there. The Star Empire has sort of fallen, but whether there's remnants of it around, they did not follow up much on the Romulan situation.
Okay, and the Klingons are our friends, especially if Martok. I don't know if he's still alive. If Martok is still the Emperor,
but the reason knowledge.
Yeah, but the reason I was thinking is, man, if you had some powerful enemies, literally all they need to do is just sit around and watch the Federation because there's always some crap going down. We're like, okay, here's the perfect time to strike. This would be a perfect time to strike. I mean, I know the fleet's controlled by the Borg and the Changelings, but what a perfect time this would be to strike. Especially because, to be honest, you would have to strike in self-defense because you've got to assume that they're going to turn that fleet into a fleet of conquest. As a matter of fact, they may come after the Klingons or the Romulans and the Cardassians, who I also assume are friendly and probably, I don't know what the Cardassians are like now after all this time.
I don't either. Yeah, they haven't told us.
Yeah, but I guess I'm wondering, I was thinking about that because in the entire run of the series, the big principalities, the powers that which the Federation had to worry about were always the Klingons and the Romulans. And then you had the Cardassians, which are nowhere near as powerful as the Federation, but they had a war with them. And then you have these really cool species like the Breen that they introduced. Right. So I kind of wonder, like, who would be an enemy that would go against the Federation in their weakened state, or again, rising up against them to take them out before they try to conquer them. I guess it'd be the Klingons.
Maybe, yeah, maybe. Like, there's so much of they haven't really gone into like the state of like the galactic politics,
right?
Yeah,
right.
So we don't really know. If I was an enemy of the Federation, though, I guess I would just wait until they have like a big event. And they're probably gonna get compromised, so that'll be our chance.
Yeah, they'll be like, it'd be great to see, like, in a humorous way, based on what you said. It'd be great to see like this villain with a wall calendar, something like Captain Archer Day and all this other stuff. Miles O'Brien Day, there's all this stuff that they're just waiting for to attack.
It's like, oh, hang on, they're launching a new starship. That thing's gonna go crazy and try to kill them, and they'll be distracted. Well, the Enterprise F. What did you think of the Enterprise F?
Boo.
You didn't like it.
No. Looks like a Voyager.
What?
It's not. The saucer wasn't round.
No. It's. What did you think, Keith?
It took me back for just a second, as Veronica said, it doesn't look like what I would consider a quote unquote Enterprise to look like, but it kind of grew on me.
Yeah, that design's been around for a little while from Star Trek Online. I think that several years ago they had a fan contest to design the new Enterprise for Star Trek Online, and that show. But it's got that post Enterprise E look where all the ships kind of look the same.
Yeah.
That's stupid.
But I like it. It's got kind of an Excelsior thing where it's a little fat looking, and it's got the
fat one.
Yeah, it's instead of the neck, it's got the two things on the side. I thought it was kind of neat. I thought it was kind of cool to see Admiral Shelby in command of the Enterprise.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah.
So now that was the Enterprise F, right?
Right.
So they only have room for 3 more before, according to Enterprise, the Great War that takes place in, dang, was that 700 years?
It was
something
like
crazy like that?
26th century or something, I think.
26.
Which that's not far off. I mean, we're in the beginning of the 25th century now.
Okay, so yeah, just 100 years or so. The Enterprise J, a ship that I really don't like, but
it looks like you left the NX-01 in a hot car and it melted.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So I mean, we've got a few minutes left. Like, what are you hoping to see next week? What do you think is going to happen?
Let's go ahead, Veronica.
I want to see the other Borg Queen from last season come back and be like, "Look, guys, I'm in charge." Haha.
Okay. I wrote that in my notes. What happened to her?
That's not going to happen.
You're talking about Girardi, like the Borg cooperative?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That's not going to happen because season 2 didn't happen.
Right.
Neither did season 1, except for the very end part.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they're going to go back to Girardi. It'd be kind of cool, though. I'd like to see Alison Pill again.
Yeah. I'm wondering how they're going to wrap this up. And given that this board, given what they've done with both the fleet technologically taken over and a lot of humans taken over by the Borg, I'm wondering how they're going to effectively, if you will, jam the signals, both the technological signals of the ship and the psychic signals. Is there going to be some kind of usage of a combination of Jean-Luc and Jack and Deanna to stop this?
Maybe. I think Jack's going to be key because that's like he's in a key spot. Like he's in the collective and has the extra abilities to be the voice.
Right.
He's Vox of Borg now, I guess. And I mean, he really, if he can overpower the Queen or take enough control of the young people to make them not murder everybody,
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm looking forward to it. We won or not won, but we were able to make it through that terrible website to get passes for the IMAX screening.
Seriously?
So, yeah. So we're gonna be heading to Cumming, Georgia next Wednesday to try to get in because a ticket doesn't guarantee you entry. They're overbooking it deliberately. So
wow,
we're gonna get down there early and try to get in to watch it on the IMAX screen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. I find myself, and then we always say this, I find myself, as what we were saying earlier, I do think that no matter how they used her, and I love how they used her, I think Troy needed a little bit more time.
Mm-hmm.
Although I read something where Terry Matalas said they only had her for so much. I have no idea if there was a Marina Sirtis scheduling problem, but I did see an interview where he said that. But now it's funny because some of the other things we're talking about, I find myself wishing this were a 13-episode season instead of a 10 episode.
Right.
I really do.
And usually we've been very critical of the season's been dragging and so forth.
Right.
And we even said in Discovery it should have been a few episodes shorter and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, you might be right because Marina Sirtis lives in England.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that makes sense. If she's not local to LA anymore, that they may have her for a shorter period of time. And I get that,
Right.
I'd love to see more of all of them. I'd love to have had a season of Data and a season of Geordi. You know what I mean? It's never going to be enough.
I also feel like they weren't writing this as a really long movie. They were writing this as a season. Okay. I feel like the other seasons of Picard and most of the seasons of Discovery, they've been writing like a 4 or 5 hour movie.
Yeah.
Where they feel like they have to put filler, and they have to
Mm,
put filler in some of the episodes and have like the D plot
right.
in there,
Yeah.
and unnecessarily stupid monologues in the middle of battles that take up 10 minutes of time.
Right. Well, I mean, and as much as I would have liked to have seen all of them from the start, I do think, like I said last week, that staggering their entries into the show has really helped the pacing.
Yeah.
You know,
It
because
has.
you have the next person to look forward to and the next person to look forward to.
Mhm.
Whereas some of the seasons, it felt like we're spinning our wheels for 3 episodes in the middle, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
Right. But and we don't know what the length of the episode next week's going to be. You know, it could be an hour, it could be longer, it could be shorter. Who knows?
Oh gosh, I'm gonna be up so late next week.
I know.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, a couple of quick comments before we get out of here. Wayne says, I was wondering when someone would bring up the Borg from season 2. Yeah, well, like Shaw said, forget about all that weird shit on the Stargazer.
Yeah, I had that in my notes, Wayne, and Veronica had mentioned it. I had that in my notes as well. Wouldn't it be interesting if the other Borg collective came back and tried to fight this Borg collective?
Right. Then Wayne also said, I think this is a 15 episode season, and no, it's not. It's next week is the finale of as far as we know, of the series of Picard, the finale of this era of Star Trek. As far as the information we have right now, like it's all coming down to next week as of right now.
Wow.
Clarence said, good on Metalis for finding a way to get Trek back in theaters. Yeah, I don't know if he was responsible for that or not, but I'm thrilled because, like I said, the Star Trek Generations was the first Trek movie that I remember seeing in the cinema, and I was 13 years old, and it was epic for me. I mean, it was Captain Kirk and Picard on screen together. It was the Enterprise D crash. I mean, it was as epic as a Lord of the Rings or Avengers Endgame would be now. You know, it was
nice.
And then Clarence also says, episode 8 is the only one I felt was dragged out. Yeah, I felt like there's spots in the season where you really could have tightened it. And like Alan had said previously, like they were in that nebula for like 4 episodes or something, you know, that
right.
But I mean, they're like you said, I mean, they're working around logistics of actor availability. They're working around
COVID. They're still probably working around COVID.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. You always see people in masks and those behind the scenes things. So I mean, they've got a lot of logistical. It's not as if Terry Matalas can just dream up his dream Star Trek season and just make it. Like you've got to work around what you've got too. So I think they've done a heck of a job. I mean, the big thing for me is just getting all these characters back and in satisfying ways. I never expected Data to come back again.
Me either.
But they figured a way to bring Data back that works in the story. Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it.
I just want to tell everybody, just for the record, as Spock would say, despite what happened to Data and Picard, if you can ever give me some kind of new body, synth body, whatever, don't make it my age. Don't make it old. I want to be 25 in perfect shape.
Right.
No diabetes. No need for glasses.
Yeah, and while we're at it, a little taller and a fuller head of hair would be great. If we're putting requests in there.
I mean, imagine waking up. Again, you're going to be grateful for life. Imagine waking up and going, hey, you have a perfectly awesome 75, no offense against people that age, 75-year-old, 80-year-old body, and you're going to live probably another 15, 20 years. Huh? Okay.
Like, we created you a synth body to save your life, and you're still short and balding. Like, what the crap, guys? I want my money back.
Yeah.
And then Wayne said it says on the page it's 15 episodes. Don't know what that was about, but no, I don't know what page you're talking about because it's a 10 episode season. I'm 100% about that. Next week's finale.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, we're over time. Let's go ahead and get out of here.
All righty.
Keith, where can people find more of you?
Instagram and Twitter and Facebook.
And how about you, Veronica?
Us.
How about us?
Feltnerdy.com.
And
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
That's right. And do you have a closing for us this week?
I did 2 seconds ago, and now it's out of my brain.
Throw something out there.
Oh, we are the Borg.
There you go. Perfect.
I remembered. Yay!
All right. Bye, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us in the comments. This has been a lot of fun.
Enjoyed.
See you next week, 8:00.